Veteran on the Move, episode 24. Welcome to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you're a transitioning veteran, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone who's still stuck in that job trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. So welcome aboard, sit back, and enjoy the ride. Army Ranger Matthew Griffin, affectionately known as Griff, walks into a boot factory in Afghanistan. That's how it started. Combat flip-flops. The idea was simple. Create an environment that gives people living in post-conflict nations the opportunity to peacefully rebuild their economy by manufacturing badass products. Combat flip-flops creates peaceful, forward-thinking opportunities for self-determined entrepreneurs affected by conflict. Hey, today I have the pleasure of talking with Griff from Combat Flip-Flops. Griff, I saw your picture. You had the little video going there at first, and I'm really jealous with what you're sitting out on a dock with a beautiful scene behind you at the moment. So thanks for being here towards the end of your digital detox.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I'd like to hear a little bit about what you did in the Army.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to fly. I'm an academy grad, and so when I first went there, I had all intents and purposes of being a pilot. Mm-hmm. And during one summer, they have it's called the Cadet Troop Leadership Training, where they send you out to a standard Army unit. And I had gone through airborne school earlier, so I was already airborne qualified, and I was able to pick up a slot to go to the 82nd Airborne, and then I got stuck in an artillery unit as a fire support officer. And so I got to jump out of airplanes in support of an infantry battalion for, a month between my sophomore and junior year, and absolutely fell in love with that job and that mission. And so I decided I was going to be an artillery guy and a fire supporter and do that. So when I got out, when I graduated, went to my basic course, I was fortunate enough to have a Ranger Regiment, regimental fire support officer. Major Flynn was one of our instructors, and he gave us the Ranger Fire Support Brief. And basically it was, here's everything that you loved about doing your job and why you picked this job, and then put it on steroids. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So it became very apparent that, me and a couple other of my buddies, we went through Ranger School with all of the intent of going to the regiment and serving there. And by August of 2003, I showed up at the 75th Ranger Regiment as a company fire support officer and spent the next 2.5 years of my life serving with awesome people and doing 3 tours to Afghanistan and 1 to Iraq.
And you were with the 75th Rangers most of the time?
Yeah, I was with the 2nd Ranger Battalion. Sorry, I got a plane flying overhead here.
I hear it. Sounds nice.
So when I got to my first conventional unit, we were actually the first Stryker unit in the Army, which was awesome. So we had the first delivered Stryker vehicles. I had the first fire support Stryker vehicle in the Army, and we got to bounce them around in C-17s all over the country, proving their worth and ability before they were deployed into Iraq. And that was a really fun job. And at the end of that is when I made the change from a conventional unit over to U.S. SOCOM to go with the 75th Ranger Regiment.
Now, how many deployments to the sandbox did you make?
I did 3 to Afghanistan between November 2003 to fall of 2004, and then I did Iraq between May or April to September of 2005. The SOF and Ranger deployments are much shorter, but very high intensity while you're there. So it's 3 months on, 3 months off, kind of a deal.
Yeah. Sometimes the worst part about deployments is the whole transition to the deployment, like just actually leaving. Once you're gone, it's not quite so bad. You're looking forward to going home, and then the reculturalization when you come home. So sometimes doing multiple shorter deployments can take its toll just as much as a real long one.
Yeah, it did. And during that whole process, my wife and I got married and had 2 kids, and so it was a very stressful time as a young adult to be going through all those changes. Yeah. Oh
yeah. So now tell me a little bit about your transition out of the Army and into what you're doing now.
So after my last deployment to Iraq with the Rangers, I had about 6 or 7 months left on my time and commitment with the Army. My wife and I at this point had decided that, she was in the Army as well, that we were going to depart from the military, and we were going to, stay in Washington State where she's from, and, serve our local communities. And, what does a guy do? What kind of job do you get after you've just been flying around the world and, blowing stuff up with helicopters and mortars? How do you transition that to
how do you put that on a resume? Right?
Yeah, how do you put that on a resume to a civilian job? And I was very fortunate in the fact that a local construction company, and this is right during the time of the housing boom, recognized that junior military officers and NCOs are great project managers, managing people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages to accomplish a very time-constrained mission, and that was building homes. So this guy specifically in our local region sought out junior military officers that were getting out to hire them as construction managers to build homes. And so it was one of those things where it's one of those hiring conferences that you see surrounding military communities. And I think if you have the opportunity to go to any of them, you don't have to pick a job there, but it's good to see what people are offering to people departing the military. So go to as many of them as you can. I went to 3 or 4, and I just happened to find this one, and the guy's name was Craig, and he was a really nice guy, former Marine officer. And he made it a point to hire us out and teach us how to be effective leaders in a civilian job. Right. And that was, so I built homes for 2.5 years in my local area, and I got to know, how to kind of come off the military mindset, how to work with, civilians who aren't motivated or required to do what you tell them to do. If that makes sense. Like in the Army, you have a certain thing of like, hey, like you have to do this just because I'm telling you. But if you're on a job site, you have to demonstrate true motivational leadership principles. And that was a good transition for me because it was still kind of in the trades and kind of more of a military kind of programmed, rough and tumble kind of mindset of building homes. And then eventually I ended up, as the housing boom started winding down, I found a way to kind of get back into serving the military through a company called Remote Medical International. And they are a remote site medical care provider, and they provide everything from equipment, training, physicians to clinics to telemedicine all over the world for people who are operating in austere or remote environments. And at this point in time, the military was really ramping up its commercial procurement of off-the-shelf goods to help soldiers downrange, and they were getting a lot of military business, but they had nobody that could speak the language. So they hired me to start managing that side of the business, and so I worked at Remote Medical for 2008 to 2011 for 3 years, flying all over the world, figuring out how to support Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and other agencies with Western level medical care in far and remote places like Afghanistan or Africa or other places.
Yeah, I'm sure that was quite the experience too, huh?
It was fun. It's people don't think that somebody who is just operated on a platoon level or has the risk management skills to do all of this stuff and manage these big contracts all the way around the world. And that's something that I would have to say veterans are uniquely qualified to do, is to go into difficult or unknown areas, have enough situational awareness to mitigate risk while still accomplishing a mission, right? And I didn't know how to establish a clinic in the middle of Africa, but I knew I could get it done. And so I just got everything that I needed lined up and flew there, met with the right people, coordinated everything, and next thing you know, you've got a clinic, right? And that's something that I would have to say that the military or the Army has. There was a skill that they gave me, and I know they've given it to lots of other people, whether they recognize it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. A common theme, and I say it all the time, too many veterans sell themselves short. There's some of those intangible skills that they have, the kind of stuff that's hard to translate onto a resume, but they are very capable individuals. They're capable of dealing with tough situations and leading other people and getting things done. Mm-hmm. So from there, how did you transition out of that job and end up where you're at right now?
So kind of a long road, but after doing this consulting job and flying all over the world, or not consulting, but working for Remote Medical International, I started consulting for manufacturers and equipment providers to make better gear faster for soldiers. And so I was traveling to all these places, and soldiers and guys in the community were saying, hey, this piece of equipment is good, but if it just did this, right, the one little tweak, it would be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And the manufacturers didn't know that, and they weren't getting that feedback. So I went to work for a consulting company that was able to take the feedback immediately from the field, give it to the manufacturers, have the manufacturers prototype a project, and then I would use my connections to field that piece of equipment, so that way the soldiers were getting what they wanted or what they needed faster. So it was a cool program doing, and during all of this process, whether it was home building, working at Remote Medical, or doing this consulting business, I was learning business, right? And that's the thing that you have to understand, that as an entrepreneur, you're not going to get out and you're not going to know everything you need to know from business, from sales to logistics to human resources to finance and terms. You're not expected to know all of that. And if you expect to jump into any of it and be a professional at it right away, you're probably not going to be. So if you get out and you take a normal job and work for somebody else, use that as a learning experience to build your skills in areas where you feel that you're weak. And so I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and in each one of these positions, I figured out ways to learn a skill that would transition into entrepreneurship. And by 2011, I had this weird, unique moment standing in a boot factory in Afghanistan and saw a combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. And I saw it as a method to keep those factories working after the war was over. And I'd built up all these skills, had all these connections, and it was time to make the leap into our own business. And that's how Combat Flip-Flops got started.
Man, what an awesome story. And so from initial idea, concept, take us through a little bit of the process and history to where you're at now.
Yeah, it's funny. So we had no idea how to make a flip-flop. No idea how to run a business. We had some basic rules, but
that's what makes the story so great.
Yeah, run a website and how to market and how to sell. We'd been exposed to all of these things. I knew we could make it happen and coordinate it to make it work. But it's a matter of now you're responsible for doing it. And so I first saw the boot in 2009 when I was in Afghanistan, and it was a couple of years of bringing the right guys onto the team, determining what we wanted to build, how we wanted to build it, hiring consultants to make tooling and prototypes in China, selling a boat or a motorhome to pay for prototypes, seeding the right stuff out to the right blogs, soliciting information, really getting that feedback, whether or not we had a product that was desired by the market, and we found out that it was. And so you just start out small. First it started with 4 pair of flip-flops on my dining room table, and we picked them out which ones we wanted, and then we had 100 in a duffel bag, which we took to a trade show, and the next thing you know, you had an order for 2,000 pair. Next thing you know, it's 4,000 pair of flip-flops, and it's you just grow a business organically in that way. And so we have gone through 3 factories in Afghanistan that have closed just due for different varieties and reasons. So now we make our footwear in Bogota, Colombia. We've expanded the line into other products for a year-round offering of cool products from dangerous places. So now we make sarongs and scarves and cashmere in Afghanistan. We make jewelry out of landmines in Laos. We make patches in Kosovo, and we make a line of textiles and bags right here in the U.S. And so we've grown the line from an idea of happening in a combat boot factory in Afghanistan to a full offering of products over 2.5 years. So it's been fun. Hey,
so what's an Army high speed low drag kind of guy know about fashion?
You spend enough time around the guys, right? And as much as you say it, like, all the guys know what they like, right? And if one guy gets something that looks cool and is different than the rest, then the rest of them get it.
Uh-huh.
Right? And so whether it's a magazine pouch or a holster or whatever it is, if you can come up with something that looks good and people want and it performs well, the guys will be into it. And essentially that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to build something that looked cool, looked unique, but was really burly and rugged and made a statement. And our customers ended up liking it. I will have to tell you that I don't do any of the design. My brother does our design, and he's a graphic artist and designer, and every piece of footwear thing that we have done, he has sat down and drawn out and printed out and put to scale and done fit models back and forth across continents. And so he has a condition that ends in retentive, and he's very artistic. So it works out well. We're able to put together some really good looking products quickly that fit and wear well.
That's awesome. Now, I heard you say we got an order for 2,000 and then 4,000. What was it like when you actually got that first significant order of 2,000? It was like, oh no, how am I going to fill this? Or were you already ready to go at that point?
Yeah, so we were ready to go at that point. And again, this kind of goes back to the skills you learn and the lessons you learn before you become an entrepreneur. And I'd have to say, reading is one of them. You should do a lot of reading. Mm-hmm. And we're watching all of this crowdsourcing, so pre-funding of projects. You're seeing all these guerrilla tactics to, seed a product and then delivery. And essentially, we just told the story. We made the product and we said, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Here's the factory where we're going to make them. If you believe in us, buy them now, and we'll deliver the product to you in 6 months. And people I think they believed and liked the honesty and the fact that they thought the story was crazy enough and we'd get it done, that they bought thousands of pairs directly off our website 6 months in advance. So we had the cash ready to go.
You pre-sold them?
We pre-sold them.
Holy cow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
that's the best business model ever.
Yeah, and so I would have to say that roughly about 50% of our product is still pre-sold. People are buying it faster than we can make it right now, which is cool, right?
Yeah, you've got a good thing.
It's fun, and it's a good product. People like telling the story. So what happened was we were literally sitting in a bar in Las Vegas with a duffel bag full of flip-flops, and you just picture this scene now. And we showed a couple dealers, and this one dealer said, hey, where can I get these? And it was just one line. I said, well, hey, we're at the SHOT Show in Las Vegas right now. Can we talk to you when we get back? And he says, well, I'm at the SHOT Show in Las Vegas right now. Can we meet? And so we literally pick up our bag of flip-flops, walk out of a bar, walk into another bar. We meet this guy, and he's an Australian distributor. We showed him the product, and 2 days later, we had a significant amount of money to fund our first run and wired into our bank account. And it was game on from there. Wow. So and then literally we walked out of that bar and we met with our production managers from Afghanistan, showed them the product and said, hey, go. So it was one of those series of fortunate events that all kind of lined up to make the project happen. That was all the good stuff that happened up to that point. And then things started rolling downhill, right? And so it's not how hard you can get, but it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
We placed a purchase order for our first 2,000 pair. Then the Pakistan-Afghanistan border was shut down, so our shipping route got closed. The U.S. announced their withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2014. So all of the procurement for the Afghan boot factories and boots went over to the Afghans, and they shut down all the factories in Kabul. So the contracts that were paying our overhead for manufacturing were now lost, and the full burden of these factories fell upon a small veteran-owned flip-flop manufacturing operation, which was not going to keep those factories open. So we did our first 2,000 pair, which we were supposed to deliver in June of 2012. They were delayed due to the border closures and the timing. They were supposed to get done in August, then Ramadan hit, and then finally they were delivered in September. So my brother and I hopped on a plane. We flew to Kabul with a bunch of duffel bags ourselves to hand carry as much as we could back.
No kidding.
And also, figure out a way to ship the rest of them back. And it was a really cool story. I like the whole scene where you're rolling up in a beat up white Corolla on the back of it, and you knock on the door, and the guy with an AK-47 slides a little metal window and checks you out, and then he closes it once you're clear, and then you go into this compound, and there's a dog running around eating a rat, and they open this big warehouse door, and there it is, like sitting on 6 pallets was 2,000 pair of flip-flops packed in opium poppy bags. Which went from, you can just imagine the scene right now. And so we're standing there and we are just so happy. Like this has gone from, out of our head as a concept, standing on a floor in Afghanistan, to a prototype, which we sold everything we could to make happen, to getting customers to believe in the product, to actually manufacturing a full production run of footwear. It was a really kind of unique moment for us to see it come in physical form. Like, hey, we're doing this. We are putting Afghans to work. We are exporting product out of this country, which is something that people said that we couldn't do when we were doing it. So we rented a bongo truck, and then we, loaded all of the flip-flops packed in opium bags in the back of the truck, and we rode on the truck like through Kabul back to our little compound, loaded them into a little, those little container houses things they have for contractors in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, the cans.
The cans, right? So we loaded all of our footwear into a can, and then we went out and we were looking for other factories in Kabul because the factory that made our footwear was closing. So we spend the rest of the day sourcing other factories and looking at raw materials and production in Afghanistan, and we, both Andy and I get up, my brother, the next morning, and we are completely stoked to actually look at our footwear, like what they look like, do the quality assurance inspection before we spend thousands of dollars and ship them back home. And within about 15 minutes, we found out that we had a 100% failure rate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so here we have, we pre-sold all of these other pairs of flip-flops. We had paid for them. We had, gone through the process. We've flown to Afghanistan. So here we are standing at like 5:30 in the morning over 2,000 pair of flip-flops. In addition, we had sold another 2,000 pair during that whole production timeline. So now we're 4,000 pair of flip-flops deep with 0 to ship. Right.
Oh man, what was wrong with them? They just weren't.
It was small stuff. It was, just some of the stitching on the Poseidons. It was the chrome on the tuk-tuks. It was just the fit on the AKs. And, we're charging $70 for a high-end piece of footwear. And if we would have shipped that product, it would have destroyed our brand. Yeah. Right. It would have solidified what people would think would come out of Afghanistan. It would have, knocked us down to, a failure these guys couldn't do. And that was not something that we were willing to do. We knew that we could make a product better, and we knew that we could make it to where somebody would want to buy it over and over again. And so we smoked about a pack of cigarettes in 20 minutes, called our wives and told them that, we were standing in Afghanistan, and, all this time and money and effort we had spent as a family to produce footwear in Afghanistan, we now had to give away 2,000 pair. That was a very difficult discussion to have with our significant others. Yeah. And then to tell them, well, hey, we found another factory, and we're going to take our personal credit card, and we're going to go buy 4,000 pair of raw materials to do it all over again.
They must have had faith in you, right?
Yeah, buying 4,000 pair of footwear at once is on your personal dime is a very stressful endeavor. So we, September 2012, we, told our material manufacturer in China, said, hey, 4,000 pair of raw materials on the double, make it quick. And we found another factory in Kabul that was absolutely beautiful. 180 people working in 2 shifts, doctors on staff, ASTM testing facilities. They had everything that you would want to make a quality piece of footwear in Afghanistan.
In Kabul, so really?
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was right across the street from the Afghan National Army Training Center, Aero Good Supply Company. And they were making combat boots for the Afghan military, and they saw what we were doing, and they wanted to backfill their military production with commercial production because they knew, in a few years that commercial production was what would keep that factory going.
I hate to interject. I'm really jealous listening to the water lapping up against the dock and the airplane flying over and the birds flying around you out there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. Keep going.
Yeah,
No, I can hear you great. So it's just a great ambiance in the background.
So we flew back with 0 pairs of footwear in September 2012, and then we started DHLing samples back and forth between China and our new factory in Afghanistan. And so we'd spend, every night on the phone or on Skype with these factories to dial in our fit or our processor, our colors, and just the ability to use technology to inexpensively and reliably communicate with these factories is amazing. It didn't cost us anything to do it. And the fact that we can DHL stuff on an account back and forth, we have to put hands on it, and we can look and show video samples between, 3 countries, on a conference call at any point in time really makes the world a little bit smaller. It makes it a lot easier for small businesses to be more flexible and react. And so we did that until December of 2012 when our factory called us and said, "Hey, we just lost our boot contract. You need to guarantee us 80,000 pair of flip-flops next year, or otherwise we're going to have to close." And, I was at this point, we were struggling to move 4,000 and 5,000 pairs. So committing, ourselves, our company, and then also that factory to keep them alive over the next year was something we were not confidently able to do. So, we had to have that discussion, and they closed down their factory. So all those people went out of work. And at this point in time, I didn't have 4,000 pair of flip-flops in raw material form sitting in a container in China that was supposed to be pointed at a closed factory, right?
Yeah.
That I just bought, that we just bought. So what are you to do, right?
Yeah. So what happened next?
We pointed the container at my house, and we converted my garage shop to a gorilla flip-flop factory, and we made them ourselves.
Really?
We made 4. Yeah, we contacted a couple engineers who live in our area, and we live in Seattle, so we have a huge production capability because of Boeing, and a couple of the other shipyards. And we found out some technology as Andy became really smart on glues and figured out adhesives and EVAs and foams, and we had a water-based solution built up for us in the United States. We sourced some ovens and infrared heat lamps and presses out of some local factories, and we built a production line in my garage.
No kidding. That's amazing. You got to do what you got to do, right?
It was awesome because the whole time we were communicating with our customers via social media, right? And it was so great because you didn't have to communicate with everybody individually, even though we did, but we were able to tell the story. And it wasn't a matter of making an excuse and not backing it up. And we had photos, video of us traveling all over the world and doing all of these different things to make this project happen. And I think that because people could see what we were doing and they believed in us enough to get it done, that, out of those 4,000 pair, we only had 4 returns. People that were just like, "Okay, you've had my money for too long. I want it back."
That's phenomenal.
4. Right. So it was, at the same time, it was super tough to deal with all of those setbacks. But in doing so, it was the same thing that pushed us forward because we knew that people were confident in us to get it done.
No kidding. So you mind if I ask some numbers where you're at now and how things have been going since?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, like what kind of volume are you doing? Do you have some consistency, or what are you doing on annual revenues or annual numbers? And you got a couple other products now too, right?
Yeah. So the numbers are close hold. So what I will tell you is, we are growing at roughly 300% year after year.
That's good.
Right. And so the biggest challenge as you grow to that is managing your finances appropriately. It's a math game at this point, as you know. I'm a engineering management major, so it's a systems engineering, right? So it's You're not actually designing things, but you're designing the system and how it works. And so being able to figure out what products and styles and sizes are selling at what time of the year, right? To make business profitable and enabling it to grow. So from the very beginning, we have been data consumers on, what our customers are buying, what sizes they're buying, how they're buying it, and when they're buying it. And we've moved everything over to a just-in-time inventory. So a lot of our manufacturing facilities, they don't have the ability to manufacture container loads per month, but they can get me 100 kilogram shipments per month after month. Right. And so we're able to move those around the world. And so what that enables them to do is it enables them to book steady factory hours that are profitable. It enables us to deliver products when we need it, without having to manage a whole bunch of inventory and warehousing to get to our customers. And we're able to turn that cash over faster to place larger and larger orders. And so we're responsibly scaling our manufacturing as well as responsibly scaling our business just based on the cash. And we're just finally at that point now where we're taking investment because we can't grow fast enough with with our current cash situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a really good problem to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, we deem our success based on booking factory hours, and we are keeping a small bootwear factory in Colombia, manufacturing flip-flops every day. You know, we've got women in Afghanistan that are making sarongs and scarves for us every day. You know, so it's pretty cool.
So that's good to hear that even though the flip-flop manufacturing shut down in Afghanistan, you were able to go back into Afghanistan with some other things.
And I think what we found, our lesson learned in that, our big lesson learned is you can't, especially in these developing nations, you can't push capability on an area, if that makes sense. Is you can't tell them, hey, you need to be able to manufacture iPad cases, right? If they don't have the tooling and the machinery and the technicians to run it. But if they say like, hey, you can do a cloth iPad cover because you have seamstresses and sewers and textiles and mills, well, that's something you're going to have to design around and do. So we design around strengths of the area to develop a product that they can immediately put people to work to build and sell and export a product to the U.S. and Europe and Australia.
That's phenomenal. Now, what words of wisdom, I mean, you've shared enough already, but what key words of wisdom inside the typical veteran's head can you pass along that's looking to go out and do something in the entrepreneurial world?
Man, there's just so many.
Where to begin, right?
So I would say the first thing to do is read. There's a great website, and I'm sure everybody's heard of it, but it's personalmba.com.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Uh-huh.
Right. And so it's essentially 99 books and a big forum of people who talk about different topics or subjects within this. But if you read and understand the basic concepts within these 99 books, you'll have the equivalent of an Ivy League MBA. I don't have a business degree. I don't believe in going to school for things. I believe that I can pick up and read an instruction manual that somebody else has printed, and I can take those concepts and immediately put them to work into my business. And I think that's something that veterans do well. How many times were you given a piece of equipment that you had never seen before, and somebody just handed it to you and gave you an instruction manual, and you were expected to employ that thing effectively within a week? Yeah. Right. So you figure it out. You figure it out, right? And so if people just take that same mindset, or veterans take that same mindset, and they grab a book and they say, well, I don't know sales. Well, go get 5 different sales books, read them, and then put that into use. And you're going to fail along the way, but you're going to be doing something, right? And they say, what a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Something along the lines. Yeah.
And then the other thing I would have to say is, if there is any doubt, there isn't any. Right? And how many times you were running a mission and you thought hey, that something could go wrong, and so you did your pre-combat inspection or your pre-combat check, and you verified what was going to happen with your team, or whether it was you decided to take an extra pause and observe a house for another 30 minutes to make sure you had all the information to go into something responsibly. Mm-hmm. If there is any doubt in your business, there isn't any. You need to check, double check, and work to make sure that your business doesn't fail because you didn't take the time to verify a doubt that you had in your head. And so that's gotten us so many times, and I can't reinforce that to people, that there's no expiration date on success. And if you just take your time, do it right, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, do everything as you're supposed to, and work hard at it, you're going to be successful.
Don't quit.
Don't quit. Can't is a 4-letter word.
That's right. Obviously, you guys went through your share of struggles and even failures, but you believed in it, and you had faith, and you persevered, and you came out on the other end, which is really the typical entrepreneurial story. Yours is very unique, but many of the aspects of it are what I would consider typical. Yeah. So, and then find other mentors. And that's really the last thing I would say is you need to find a mentor. That's great advice. Yeah.
I've got 6 or 7 of them that I call on all the time, that if I can't figure it out in a book, or if I need help with a personal relationship, or I need help on how to structure a deal or creative ideas, is having just a network of people that you can speak with that can provide you that experience or that confidence, or ask you the questions that you need to ask yourself to drive on to the right conclusion. And if you're a small business owner and somebody has helped you along the way, and I know that they're going to return the favor. So my mentors are people who were sitting where I was sitting at 10, 20, 30 years ago, and they're returning the favor and helping other entrepreneurs. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because people will give it to you.
Okay. Well, we're about out of time, Griff. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You guys, you have a phenomenal story. It's absolutely fascinating, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to give you a shout out for Combat Flip Flops. So tell people where they can find you and what your products are again.
So Combat Flip Flops, and it's really simple. It's www.combatflipflops.com. Twitter is Combat Flip Flops. Facebook is facebook.com/business not bullets. And you can find us online and on our dealer pages. You can find us selling through a variety of small veteran-owned shops across the country, Europe, and in Australia.
All right. And I got one last request from you, Griff. When we're done here, if you could snap a selfie of yourself sitting on that dock with the lake and the mountains behind you, that's the picture. Yep. That's the picture I'd like to use for your episode, if you're good with that.
All good.
All right, great. Well, thanks again, Griff. Great story, and thanks to you and your wife for your service to your country. And it's good to see you're getting a little taste of your own success, and you've fought for it and defended it. And it's great to see that you guys have finally found your own freedom.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Well, thanks for helping encourage other veterans to be entrepreneurs and get our country back on the right track. So thank you for doing that.
All right, Griff. Well, thanks again, and stay in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.